All right, so I think we can get started. We have
Wonderful.
a third person who's here with us, Emily from the Jewish Fertility Foundation. My name is Gabby Spat, and I am the executive director of the BlueDove Foundation. And we focus on mental health and substance abuse education, awareness, and outreach through a Jewish lens. And we are so glad to be here with our friend Meredith, who we met through the Jewish Fertility Foundation, actually.
Right.
So it's a real special connection. And tonight we're going to talk about what we like to say, quieting the silence. It's all about sharing personal stories related to mental health that help to eradicate shame and stigma. And mental health, infertility is something that spans across all communities. And in the Jewish community, we're really focusing on bringing awareness to it. So 1 in 8 couples suffer from infertility, and it could be all different ways in all different spaces and what that looks like. For mental health, 1 in 5 U.S. adults over the age of 18 experience a mental health issue. And at times, research shows that women actually are affected at different rates than men when it comes to different types of mental illnesses. Anxiety, depression, women scale much higher in experiencing those areas of mental health struggles. Suicide, research shows that women experience it also more, but men actually, hear the other computer, it's making, and men actually go through with it more. And, here we're live, we're talking about this, and the idea is that we want to bring these topics to life. And so, Meredith, today we're excited to talk to you and hear from you about your story, but really why you chose to share your story. And what does it mean to you to talk to other women, to talk to other couples who have gone through or who are going through what you've done. And I'm going to introduce Meredith, and we are both based in Atlanta. Meredith is a Jewish professional. She is a wonderful woman and a heart of gold and cares about helping people through this topic. So from the bottom of our hearts, from myself, and I can speak for the Jewish Fertility Foundation also, thank you for quieting this. Thank you for sharing your story tonight and always when you're asked to, and for putting it in the Quieting the Silence book, which brought us together. And we hope more than anything that we can make an impact tonight on anybody's life. And if we can make an impact on one life, on one couple, on one woman, that makes a huge, huge difference. So Meredith, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. So I'm so happy to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity. This is the second opportunity you've given me to talk about my story, about infertility, about depression, particularly as it relates to pre and postnatal depression. And I really appreciate it. So I am 36. I'm pregnant with my second kid. To get pregnant with the first, it took us about 2 years. And a number of different doctors, a number of different plans. We ended up doing very little invasive treatment, thank God. But the process was brutal. My little boy is now 22 months old, and I am about 14 weeks pregnant with the next one. We were very lucky to be there. So my infertility story is not the same as one that I have friends who tried for 8 years and 15 rounds of IVF. And that sounds just incredible to me. But I think mine is probably a little more common in that it took me 2 years. And I went to doctors who brushed me off. And I'm guessing that's a lot of people, particularly because I am not super skinny. So that's a tough one, and that's a mental health discussion all differently. Yeah. Once we were successfully pregnant, thank God, Prenatal and postnatal depression are super, super real, and it has to do with chemical changes in your body. I know a lot of people talk about still their stigmas around mental health, which is the reason BlueDove exists. And we don't talk about it enough, particularly something like prenatal depression. When you are someone who has dealt with fertility and you're pregnant, but all of a sudden you're sad about it, everyone looks at you and thinks, you got what you wanted, lady. What are you doing? So the terror that you feel when all of a sudden it has worked and you have to bring a whole new person into your life is an entirely different ballgame. I have always, as a person, been pretty open about my mental health struggles. I can think back to some really unfortunate Facebook statuses a decade ago that we'd all like to forget. But I've always been very open about it. I have been in and out of therapy since I was 8. And I think everyone in the world needs therapy. I think everyone should have it. I think that is how we will feel good as people. And I think if we don't talk about it, more and more people stay bottled up and keep it in. For me now, I've been active in the Jewish community here in Atlanta most of my life, on different sides of spectrums and in different organizations. And I currently live in the Orthodox community here in Toco Hills, excuse me, where such a close-knit, tight community really, really rarely talks about mental health and the tolls that it takes. So I hope that by sharing my experience, that someone in my community or in a community like mine gets the opportunity to see that they're not alone, and that there's really nothing wrong with talking about it.
That is the most beautiful thing. And, in Judaism, the idea of community, the idea of supporting one another, right? I like to think a lot about when I talk about mental health and the idea of, tikkun hanefesh, right? Heal the soul,
yeah,
right? Yeah. And if we're not at our best, how can we use the Jewish idea of tikkun olam to heal the world?
Yep.
And I think you are exemplifying both of those ideas very well, right? You've taken the time to realize I have to work on myself, right? You're sharing your story, you're helping to feel people. That's the tikkun olam piece. And that, I think, makes you so special. And to stand up, right? This is raw, and these are real personal things that you are sharing. This is deep. This is, real connection. And I think within our work and also within the Jewish Fertility Foundation, how do you eradicate shame and stigma? And this is the perfect example. So again, I can't thank you enough for sharing this and sharing your story, which you do tell more in the book. When you think about experienced and how your life changed, how do you support yourself when your mind might wander, right? You said there's another pregnancy, right? Which is amazing. Mazel tov, mazel tov.
Thank you. Thank you.
Has your mind gone to a dark place at all now in this second pregnancy? And how are you handling it?
So the answer is yes, although this pregnancy, and there are many other people like me who are currently pregnant in the middle of this global pandemic, has a much different backdrop, right? I found out that it was successful, right? That we were pregnant the day I went into the office to get all my stuff to bring it home so I could work from home. So my knowledge of this pregnancy has been entirely part of the COVID-19 pandemic. That is crazy. And to stop and think about, because we know so little, right? We know nothing about what this all holds. To think about bringing another person into the world at this time is terrifying, right? On the other hand, we've worked really hard for this baby. We're really excited for this baby. Humanity is very strong. Life finds a way. We are going to be a lovely, wonderful family, even if we're stuck in our homes and wearing masks. And Jeremy and I talked about it. So that's my husband, Jeremy. I got really worried. So the 2 days after I found out I was pregnant, 3 days after, I was in the ER with the flu and a COVID-19 test because I had all the same symptoms. And it took us 12 days to get those results.
Oh my
So that 12-day period, I had to think about what happens if I lose this baby, sort of every single day, all day. And in a moment that is this crazy, I actually found myself able to acknowledge that that could happen and it wouldn't, be the end of the world, which is an emotional strength I certainly never knew I had. But your mind goes to really dark places. And then you look at your living kid. In my case, I'm very lucky to have one. And I think, how could I possibly love something more than this? And so you start guilting yourself and shaming yourself about a potential for your love to not spread where you want it to. And then you feel guilty for feeling guilty about an emotion that you haven't had yet. So there's such a shame spiral in so much of mental health depression, particularly in situational, moments like this. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Is there any advice that you would give to a woman or to a couple that is going through and experiencing infertility? And during COVID-19, infertility is a totally different experience.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, women,
particularly people who aren't able to receive services.
Yeah, or you were in the middle of it and it got
Right.
postponed.
Absolutely, I cannot imagine that kind of heartbreak.
Yeah, so I'm curious if what you would share with another couple or another woman who's going through this, and if there's anything anyone had ever shared with you that made a difference.
Sorry, my nose is so itchy. One of the things that for me was most powerful, and this probably has to do with my upbringing. I'm raised by very liberal academics, and I have always known that there were more kids than parents had time for in the world. When Jeremy and I first started looking into, when it had taken 6 or so months and we weren't seeing anything happening at all, and I started talking to the doctor, we started looking at the cost, right? The cost to procreate on your own when your body doesn't want to do it for you, and which is, outrageous. But we realized that the same amount of money could help us foster or adopt a child. And so pretty early on, we sat down with each other. So having a supportive spouse, having a spouse who's on the same page with you is so huge. And being incredibly communicative about your needs and what you care about, particularly if you don't even know them, right? Like talking them out was super big to me. I always thought, oh yeah, adopting a kid would be really great. Look at what a good person I would be. That, sure. Okay. But that's all fantasy. That's all in your mind. And when it comes to that, you actually might not get one on your own. Being able to sit down and have long and very open conversations with your spouse or partner, to say, you know what, we're not going to spend $15,000 to $30,000 bringing a baby into the world when we could spend that helping another baby live a wonderful life. We are very, very lucky that what we ended up doing worked. And in fact, it worked so well that this time around, instead of going back to the fertility clinic, I said to my OB, hey, can I do that thing again? And it worked. And it worked right away, which was shocking. I was floored that it did. Not very good at giving myself shots. And I did it, and I did it well. So when you don't have someone to talk about this with, and really, even if you have people to talk about with, if you don't have someone who is so incredibly squarely on your team, you're alone, and you're alone really profoundly. When there is someone in your life who might not agree with you, might not have the same priorities or values, but whose love, affection, and support for you is strong enough to hear what you have to say, and to hear your perspective and your thoughts, and to help support you in where you want to go. That also means, someone who will tell you, I don't think this is a good idea. But someone who will put aside their own concerns if they don't match yours, and be squarely on your team. Like, that's everything. I think that being as open as I was about our fertility story, which wasn't even that open, but I, talked to a bunch of people, but really close friends, not crazy publicly, but as being as open as I was about it gave me not only that many more people to celebrate with me when we had successes, but to hold me up when we had losses, right? And no, is there some sort of internal moral failing when your body doesn't do what you want it to? Of course you feel that. It's not real. It's absolutely not real. Excuse me. Ugh, my nose. But you absolutely feel, what did I do? Did I miss my chance? Did I screw it up? Was that birth control I took in my 20s? Did that mess everything up, And to have someone who can tell you, frankly, and my husband said this a number of times, Meredith, you're being an idiot. Stop. You're going to be great. We're going to do this, and you're going to be a mom one way or another.
Yeah.
Was really wonderful. The other thing that Jeremy said to me, when the first couple things we tried didn't work, with the infertility process with the clinic, was he said, you know what? If our family is just you and me, that's a pretty great family, and it's going to be wonderful.
That's amazing.
Oh gosh, he's the best.
You continue to amaze me by your vulnerability.
Thank you.
And by sharing these pieces. And I think you touched on some really important pieces, right? Support. Mm-hmm. And I think support is everything. Goes across the board when you're thinking and you're talking about mental health, and your mind can go to this dark place, right? And you have this group, or you have this individual that you can reach out to, that knows what you're going on, that just randomly calls you and says, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? Did you go back to the doctor? Can we celebrate? What, or when you share bad news, that sits there and they know how to support you, maybe because there's tools and resources that they've been given, or they just ask you, and
what do you need?
Exactly. What do you need? How can I love you? How can I support you?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
How can I help you? I think that, and again, across fertility, across any mental illness, can make such an impact on
absolutely
somebody.
Absolutely.
And, when you were going through this, the Jewish Fertility Foundation has been around for several years in Atlanta. And again, it's how you and I connected, which was so special. And they offer support groups to people that are part of their network, right?
They do. And I actually was going to help start one here in this part of the community, because one of my neighbors is a social worker who works with Jewish Fertility Foundation, and I agreed to be part of it. I was happy to, super excited. And about 3 weeks before the first meeting of the group, I found out I was pregnant. So I have not worked directly with the Jewish Fertility Foundation in those support groups, but I planned to.
But they do. And, they're such a gift to the Atlanta community.
Absolutely.
And they since have expanded to Cincinnati and offer online programming to support women and couples who are going through infertility, and expanding also into friends and family. And how do you love somebody that's going through infertility?
The materials that they put out are spectacular. Not unlike BlueDove. Between both organizations, you guys are supporting, I know that there's more to it than that, but supporting women in a way that I've never seen before, which is really, really phenomenal.
Thank you. It's been interesting, and I think Alana and Emily and the rest of the team at the Jewish Fertility Foundation could speak to this, that as young organizations that are talking about somewhat taboo topics, right? 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you didn't talk about these.
Absolutely.
IVF has only been around for 40 years. And so, you know, IVF babies are just turning.
And only particularly successful for a fraction of that.
Yes, yes, yes. You know, bringing to light these topics, and how do we encourage people to be vulnerable, to support people, to come together, to share, I think is so important. And especially today, right, during COVID, where people are home, where people are by themselves, you know,
Right.
thinking about mental health just for a second, and some of what you've gone through, is there any tips or tricks that you might be able to share? You know,
Sure. One of the things that I have had to learn to do, and I couldn't pinpoint why or where, is to be really comfortable with myself, right? We all have a list of things we don't like about ourselves. We all have, you know, and often we let that list domino on top of us until everything is falling apart. But at the core, I observe this in myself, and I have trained myself to start looking for it, which I think is very important, so that you have that continually, are the places where I succeed on my terms, right? The places where I feel good. You know, we pick fights on the internet with strangers, but you know what? I'm a happier person, and I'm a good, happy person who does good things. Thank you. My phone is dying, so my husband is here to plug it in.
Spot, so we're
yeah. And so being okay with yourself involves a lot of internal communication, and you sound really silly when you say mantras or talk yourself into something, or, you know, imagine the actual words that you say meaning more directly to yourself than with others. It's very silly, right? You feel ridiculous, but for me at least, it has brought me to a place where on my own, which I think is the most important, on my own, I'm pretty great. And so the days that I doubt that, I remember I can look at the things that I have done and the ways that I have shown myself exactly what is great about me. I think that also has helped me in relationships. I have this crazy awesome partner, and seriously, I can't tell you how awesome, like, I can't say enough how awesome he is. But I do regularly get my, you know, envious friends wanting to know where they can find one too. And I'm sorry, guys, he's mine. I'm not a sharer in that way. But having a partner who also knows the work you're doing on yourself, and when I get on myself, he stops and says, "That's ridiculous. And here, let me list you the reasons." And to have someone who, again, is so on your side as to help you pull yourself out of wherever you are, is invaluable. Now, that person doesn't have to be your partner, right? You can have your best friend from childhood who's known you since you guys were both in diapers, who says, "I will not allow you to talk about my friend like that." Right? That it doesn't have to be a partner. I got real lucky that it is. You know, it's the one I'm stuck in quarantine with, is that one. But to have somebody, to find somebody, it could be your mom, right? It could be your kid, for that matter, who is there to remind you that you're more than your body, right? You're more than what your body is or isn't doing in terms of fertility, and that you're a lot more than whatever your brain is telling you at any moment. See, it's the thing I would wish on everyone in the world. He's in the next room, so I know he'll start giggling if I start talking about him too much. But in our relationship, we didn't meet till we were in our 30s. Actually, I was 29, and didn't get married till I was 31. Didn't have a baby till I was 34. And the tenderness with which we treat each other, I think has given me a chance with my mental health to breathe, to really just breathe. And the one thing that my mom always taught me And there are a lot of lessons I would not share, but the one that I do is that every day ends.
Yeah.
Every single day ends. Like, yeah, okay, the sun will come up tomorrow, sure. But whatever you're feeling right now will stop, no matter what.
Yeah. I think your mom is a smart woman, and it's 100% true, right? And the work that the BlueDove Foundation does, the work that the Jewish Fertility Foundation does, you know, we are in the Jewish community, we're rooted in Jewish values, we support all kinds of people, but I think it's important to realize every day ends,
Mm-hmm.
and every week ends.
Right.
Every week starts over. Every week we have time to stop, to pause, to reflect. And as Jewish organizations, you know, what we often at times look to our culture, our religion, our spirituality, our faith, whatever you want to call it. And we're always given the gift of Shabbat every week to cleanse our mind, right?
Yes.
To forget about yesterday, to forget about last week, and to start over. And the way you said that, I think was just beautiful and perfect.
Thanks.
And Shabbat is the gift in my mind that we have as individuals to take care of ourselves, to clear our mind, to, you know, bring back our mental health fresh and clear for the next week.
Shabbat is one of the like largest reasons why I am an Orthodox Jew. I did not grow up Orthodox. I was very firmly rooted in Reform tradition, which I still super love. But I found Orthodoxy actually when I met my husband, who was much more religious than I was, and thought, oh man, I could never do that. And then I started to experience Shabbat, and it's interesting because, you know, with a kid and when we are not, you know, homebound, you go out to meals and you go play and you do stuff and you're on all of Shabbat, right? You're on. It's work. It's exhausting, but it's rewarding work. And now, not that we didn't do this before, but even more so, we have a lot of pajama Shabbat, where nobody has to get dressed up and the food doesn't have to be fancy. And we take a lot of naps and read a lot of books and cuddle, right? And that as an experience is so refreshing, right? There's no pressure to reflect on the week if that's not where you're feeling it. You know, there's no pressure to do anything but exist.
That's so nice.
And there are more than enough activities you can do on Shabbat if you don't use electronics or so forth, to distract yourself from your mind wherever you are.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like it. They're like, oh, well, I'm stuck with myself. I'm sorry, you can do puzzles and read books anywhere.
Yeah. And couples and, you know, women who might be on their own going through this, it's tough. It's emotionally draining. Infertility. It is a tough experience to wrap, you know, your whole head around, and to be able to get into a mind space like you've said, you know, to clear your mind is so important.
Even to just give yourself a chance to do nothing. Yeah. That is the blessing of Shabbat for me.
Yeah, because
maybe my son will get fed a meal today. I don't know. Maybe he'll just eat snacks. I don't know. Maybe we'll have popsicles on the porch at 6 p.m. I have no idea.
Soon he'll be cooking his own meal. But I think in everything you've said, in the rawness, right, and the vulnerability, that is a place where somebody can go. If somebody can get there, if somebody can dig deep in themselves, it really can help themselves get to that next space, right?
I sure hope so.
I think so. I've, seen it, and there's so much to think about. And, again, you've shared, if you guys are turning in, we're talking about with Meredith here, who shared her story of infertility, of mental health in a book with Quieting the Silence, which was published by the BlueDove Foundation. And the way we met Meredith was through the Jewish Fertility Foundation.
That's right. Alana saw I wrote a personal essay about the first year of my son, who was extremely premature, the first year of his life, and sent me an email sort of very excitedly with lots of exclamation marks asking if I had heard about the BlueDove book.
I love it. I love it. And I also like to say besheret, right? You,
Yes.
me, the BlueDove Foundation, the Jewish Fertility Foundation, we've come together because of our work, because of our shared values of supporting individuals when it comes to mental health, when it comes to infertility in the Jewish community and beyond. And the support that we give each other, the support that we see individuals give each other, I think makes a big difference in everyone's
For
life
sure.
too. And thank you. Thank you.
So happy to be here, really.
It's wonderful. So I think that's going to end us. We just, are closing out Mental Health Awareness Month. It's been incredible to do this. We have worked with the Jewish Fertility Foundation. This is our second program this month. On Mother's Day, they did a yoga program to support.
Yes, it was lovely.
Yeah, women couples experiencing infertility, and if we can work together as organizations, as individuals, as like-minded people to quiet the silence, as we like to say, to encourage people to speak out, I think it's going to go a long way. The transparency, the support. So thank you.
Absolutely. I know that the Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta, I'm an employee. It's also really happy to be a part of this and
Yes.
a part of supporting this conversation as far as it can go.
Atlanta is a lucky place to be for individuals, for Jewish innovation, for support. And, we have people tuning in here tonight. Yes, we had a few technical difficulties as we got started, but there's people sharing and there's people sending hearts. And, this world is a better, safer, kinder place because people share. And we're going to make a big impact. Both of these organizations, I know it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.